Greetings once again, dear friends. Fragile Dragon back here with my dear friend Andrew from Amphlett Reviews. And today we're going to dive into, I think, what's maybe a first for me for sure. I think you've already done a review of the movie, but we're going to dive into Kill.
Yes.
The Indian kind of action spectacular from this year, from 2024.
Yes, that's it.
That did get a cinema release over here.
Came out in July, I think July 5th, and I think the same time as actually in India, but I think the same time, but very short, I think about a week, maybe 2 weeks at most. Came at the same time as Maxine, so I did a double go. Watched it.
Nice. So you saw it actually at the cinema?
Yeah, I saw it in View Cinema in Primworks. There wasn't many showings for it. I think there's only 2. It tends to be the case with a lot of these films. But yeah, I had my double bill with it, so I was very lucky to see that. There was advertised quite a bit with a few of the Lionsgate-based films, so so I was kind of aware of it beforehand. So when it did pop up, I jumped on my chance to see it. But I know the marketing in the UK wasn't like as amazing as it could have been for this film. I think.
No, and it was a trailer kind of weirdly, I think. I saw the trailer when we went to see something. I can't remember what it was.
I think it was Monkey Man. I think I remember seeing the trailer, Monkey Man.
We didn't see that in the pictures. I think it was before Twilight the Warriors for us.
Okay.
But saw the trailer and didn't kind of make enough of an impression for us to track it down at the cinema, which I'm kind of kicking myself about now because I got it on a deal on Prime where you could rent it for £1.99 on Prime, and I was like, all right, okay, I'll got a punt for £1.99. That's a bargain. And then was like, shit, okay, it's just so much better than I expected it to be. And then obviously bought the 4K. That I think I spotted you'd had the 4K first, and I was like, yeah, man, I've got to jump on this and get it because again, that was on a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it was weird because I got it from Amazon US, and it was cheaper than the regular 4K, which really baffled me. Still more of a higher pricing steelbook than I usually do, but just because of how fast it came out after the cinema release, I had to jump on it. I wanted to watch it again, and straight away, it's one of those things like I don't really want to stream it if I know if I'm definitely going to get it. I'm definitely going to watch it and see it on the 4K officially with the nice artwork and extra features.
Yeah, and I'm not normally super into steelbooks, but the steelbook for it's really nice. And I kind of put together a good bundle for it. So before we jump into it, the synopsis on IMDb for anyone who's not seen it, though, I would say at the beginning, if you've not seen the movie, pause this, go and find the movie. You can watch it on Prime, or you can track down a physical media version and then come back and check out because we're going to spoil heavily as we go through this. So be warned, I will put enormous block text up on the screen, spoiler warning, because we're going to get into it. So but first off, the synopsis on IMDb is short and sweet and just says, during a train trip to New Delhi, a pair of commandos face an army of invading bandits. Full stop. Right?
That's pretty good. To be fair, that's pretty reasonable. Yeah, that's like if you want just a very brief synopsis of what the film is without knowing too much, that's a good way to go into it for sure.
Yeah, so I'd seen comparisons to Train to Busan, weirdly some comparisons to John Wick, which I think now is like almost international law for lazy reviewers.
Everything's compared to John Wick these days.
Yeah, anytime it's any action. I know it's also been picked up by Lionsgate too. I didn't get any John Wick vibes at all. Train to Busan I can understand because it's on a train, but they're not really remotely the same sort of
it's the closest you can compare it to something like that, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of. In a way, the Bullet Train maybe is marginally more, but again, it's just purely by the fact that it's set on a train. I think I found that this was its own little beast. It was kind of a simple setup, but just very well executed and
Absolutely.
really well performed, right? Kind of by actors who I think were mostly first timers. So our main man is Laksha. I think this is his motion picture debut.
Which is what a debut, man. Like, oh my God, like, and being labeled as the next action hero in India. And I think he's got a good career ahead of him, whatever he decides to do. I think he's got a bit of an open ticket, I think, with this. It's good to be a good genre-based movies he can just start doing. Maybe, hopefully doesn't get picked up too much by American cinema, because I don't want him appearing in a Marvel movie. It's just this kind of genre. Let's build up a bit of a career up for this, because I think this is a good starting point for sure. But yeah, all the cast in this was phenomenal. Everyone was great in this film.
I thought the villain did a great job too. The kind of the main sort of, I mean, there's a bunch of villains. Obviously, he takes out hundreds of villains in the course of this. But the guy I'm referring to plays Fanny, and I think that's an actor called Raghav Juyal, who is a slow motion dancer. Did you fall in that rabbit hole?
I did, would have known that, but it makes sense the physicality aspect of it, I guess. It all translates quite well, doesn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, and he was great. But I think, and for me, more his acting performance was maybe slightly better than his action performance, because I think he did a good job of being like, it's hard in these
slimy and
movies.
just kind of like he's an opportunist, like, you know, someone. It's an interesting kind of like theme with the film about families and about
Hmm.
responsibility, status, and his character is it's a product of just his upbringing. You know, he's comes it's a family of bandits. His dad
Hmm.
is a bandit. He's a bandit. His cousins. His whole family is on this train, and he's just
Yeah.
doing what he does. You know, he just robs people, and you know, you get to see different sides of him. Like when he has that conversation with one of the conductors, I believe,
Hmm.
about going to university, and he's like, "Hey, here's my number," and goes to the VIP, and it's like he's very, I won't say charming, but he knows how to talk. I think he knows how to play people, maybe.
Hmm.
And you know, again, like I said, he's an opportunist. You know, he sees the points in the film where he kind of like spots something. Goes, you know what? I don't want to keep doing this over and over again. We've got a gold mine here with potentially kidnapping this kind of wealthy little family that are in this
Hmm.
kind of like train business, I believe, like go-to transport, I believe it is. I can't remember correctly, but you know, someone who's constantly butting heads with his dad, which I think is quite funny, quite interesting. And yeah, I kind of like that kind of back and forth relationship. I thought that was quite interesting, and him being a good adversary towards the main lead protagonist commando character is it's good fun. It's really good
Yeah.
fun, and
Oh,
it gets
completely.
personal. It's very personal as the
It,
film is
it
like.
really does. I mean, kind of, and in some ways that leads into the title because the title card comes up pretty far into the movie by all accounts. And
It comes in bang on 45 minutes. The film is an hour and 45 minutes long, comes on bang on 45, which is
and
when everything changes for the.
yeah, it really does. In terms of the ante on everything gets massively kind of upped up. So up until that point, our main kind of two hero characters are two commandos, which is
Mhm.
Laksha and his friend, whose name I don't have beside me, but basically him and his kind of buddy from the army are taking the train back. The train is taken over by bandits, and then 45 minutes in, once again, spoiler alert, the love of his life is killed pretty heinously directly in
Yep,
front of them by Fanny, by our main kind of villain. And at that point, any sort of modicum of restraint that our main hero is attempting kind of to
exactly. Yeah,
try
everything
and
before that
maintain.
has been he's been holding back. You can tell, like, you know, again, this is a character that's the film itself is very heavily emotional in terms of all the characters there are based in what they do are based on emotion, and our main character is just, you know, he's doing what he's trying to do. You know, he's a situation, he's kind of observing, and he's trying to like help the civilians on this train. He's trying to make sure his love of his life, the one that he wants to marry, is
Mhm.
safety as well. And you know, there's a bit of a kind of like a conflict there between like the family and him, because obviously he's not there. She's meant to go out and marry. There's other person's arranged marriage,
Mhm.
so they're going to like essentially meet up on this train, go off together. He proposes. There's a great little intimate moment there,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, like, this is the point where I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this woman, and you know, you can tell that they have really good chemistry with each other. It's very nice. Those scenes they're limited, but they're nice. They're really well placed in the film. That's where I say you get the more traditional kind of Bollywood stuff, maybe.
Mhm. A
It's
little bit, yeah.
glowing and glee it is kind of thing. The music choice is very traditional Bollywood, because I haven't seen a whole lot of Bollywood movies. I know you haven't either, from the looks of
No,
it.
same. And
Um,
certainly this is the kind of first kind of. I know this is maybe a bit of a departure, and we'll absolutely get into kind of maybe theories as to why, but this is very much a sort of departure away from what Bollywood action movies have traditionally been like. And
yes,
they've not been for me. I think RRR
yeah,
was the
I
last one that
agree.
I tried, and I really struggled with it. And I think it was you could tell it was very well made, but it just lent a bit too much on the stuff that I'm not a fan of in American action movies. So it led RRR was too much into kind of like CG, and you could
Yes,
tell how much of it was probably filmed with no real sets, and like, everything was just felt very like insubstantial by
yeah,
comparison to kind of this.
I agree. It was very artificial. I think a lot of
Yeah.
Bollywood movies are, and it's weird because like they do have some good performers there. There is some good actors, and there is some amazing sequences that I've seen. Like, you know, when I used to work at the cinema, you see
Mhm.
quite a lot of Bollywood movies. That was the core audience we had when I was used to
Mhm.
working at a cinema. And you do see some of the end shots of the movie in between. It's like, oh, that's a good scene, that's a good shot, but it's like it's not clicking for me. It's not working. As you mentioned, too heavy CG, or it just kind of doesn't really work for me and my taste and what I like to see. But from
No,
my
same.
understanding of it, this is a first as a genre first. It's a genre piece first. It's nothing like this has ever been properly done, from my understanding. So you got a big TIFF, Midnight Madness in America
Mhm.
back in 2023 by doing a
Mhm.
little bit of research, and it's a film they said, yeah, we just want to make a really cool movie and not worry too much about tradition or how we make up a traditional Bollywood movie, because they even got told maybe we should put more love scenes in there, put more traditional stuff that would sell, a quote kind of thing. But because the nature of how much blood there is in this film and how much action, and it feels such an anti-Bollywood movie, and I think it works really well for it. One of the interesting things you may not be aware of is the action director and choreographer. Korean influence, and they are involved in Snowpiercer, and that ballerina film was on Netflix recently as well. So there's some involved in that. So interesting collaboration partnership there.
Yeah, I think that was very telling.
It feels more like a night comes for us, less than a John Wick, more Korean influence.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too, and I think Night Comes for Us is kind of Indonesian, but yeah, I think your comparison's dead on. Like it does have a lot of the same energy. That's less, particularly in sort of South Korean and in the Indonesian movies, it's less about
kind of more like that kind of genre than it is anything to do with John Wick. Absolutely.
But it's a lot less concerned, because obviously we both come to this from a deep love of Hong Kong cinema, and there's a very kind of definite style and technique in the choreography that you kind of see particularly in Hong Kong movies, and you also get in Japanese movies, so the style is very different. But in Indonesian films, I think kind of post-Raid, so really the rise of like Timo Tjahjanto, it's got a sort of scrappy brawlerness to it, where they're less concerned with perfect form and more concerned with, like, I think kind of the factor of certain things,
punching, grounded realism a little bit. And it's despite the film having like doing some research onto like 9 months of practice, like in terms of training, choreography kind of thing, and then coming on set having this kind of well rehearsed but also kind of scrappy kind of fight, because it's like when you watch it, it's so impressive how they managed to do it with these tight corridors, and to keep it fresh as well, and to keep it energy. And this is all mostly night based kind of fights,
a lot of blades,
environmental kills as the film goes along, which is impressive. It's really interesting how they managed to keep it interesting and fresh, and good timing, because there's multiple people coming in and out of these shots. It's not just simple one-on-one fights all the time. It's like could be 3 to 4 people, and it's a lot of good credit to the cinematography and the editing, because it's you got to purvey that, and also make the character not a Superman. He's not like a John Wick kind of guy. But he does get injured. He does get his ass kicked quite a lot in the film. Up until a point where he basically goes, I would refer to upgrade, if anyone's seen that. Which, when it's like a switch happens, it's like, I'm not, holding back anymore. I'm not kind of playing nice, and he just knows those dodge moves, knows how to do those lethal kills. And it's such and you can tell because the way it's shot, the way it's kind of put together, it's so different, and it's getting more grimmer and grimmer and darker, and I would say more horror based. And I don't know if you got picked up on some of those vibes.
Definitely.
A couple of sequences which, because I watched the film a few times now, and I've watched it with different audiences to kind of see what they think. And there's definitely a shot. It's an amazing shot where it's like a low angle, and it's coming from the other end of the car, and it's the style of villain's character reactions to their main protagonist, and he's basically Michael Myers' silhouette shadow. The light in the background, it's so fun. And then the bodies later on, he's hanging the bodies.
It's
really like, whoa,
it's psychological warfare on them.
It is heavy. It's so emotional, feel psychological, as well as the fighting, which leads into that, which makes it a really entertaining film. From start to finish, it's something like you're fully on board with, and you want to see where this goes. And because it's such a, and again, Knives is always so much more brutal and such more nastier. It's much more intimate kind of fighting in the films, which is incredible seeing how they've kind of put all these kind of shots together. But yes, some Korean influence on there in terms of the some of the filmmaking, which I think definitely leans well into it. So definitely less for John Wick, definitely more international.
And I think our director it was, I can pull up his name and not do a bad job of butchering it, but it's Nikhil Nagesh Bhatt, and he'd said apparently this was partly inspired by him being on a train that was robbed, though I don't imagine it's based on a 1995 actual real life train robbery, I believe. So I don't think it's happened like this, but I think the idea must have been in his head and he went for it. But he has said in like a lot of the interviews and the TIFF festivals that he always had an idea for this, and he wanted to do a genre piece, and he wanted to do something unconventional. And on the extras on the edition, and as well, they kind of show how they make the
this train set, and it's like it's absolutely incredible. Like, and the amount of level they've gone onto it, kind of like take pieces out, and the amount of detail, because they knew the audience would know those little details of what those trains would look like, and it explains a lot of the camera work and a lot of the things they managed to pull off in the film, because the fact they could assemble it, kind of take pieces out, have the camera coming in, take out, put the piece back in, and have the lighting kind of go past by, so it's like in a real train cart, and so it's really seriously impressive how they managed to do it, and
a huge amount of practical effects too, because there's a lot of, as we've sort of alluded to, there's a lot of gore, and there's a lot of kind of very visceral, kind of very graphic kind of action. So if people are getting stabbed, which they frequently are, so there's an awful lot of like implements going into eyes, and there's a lot of kind of like huge open wounds being kind of made on top of people's heads, or people being hit with axes, or there's a lot, right? But it gets a sense that almost all of it is practical though.
Yeah,
I think particularly with some of the hits, there's a bunch of you see most of the actors going through some sort of head casting or body casting, so they could kind of make fake cadavers and things to kind of use for some of the sequences. But yeah, and I think the director had said that he wanted to have no two kills the same in the movie, and that kind of really mission achieved on that front, because it does completely evolve. It never gets, because a difficult thing, right? If you have something that's so action heavy,
drama movie as well,
it feels samey. Yeah,
absolutely. It's considering it's in essentially like a block of trains. It's similar to like Snowpiercer, I guess, in that sense. It's you've got a number of train carts. How do you make each one interesting? How do you up the stakes? How do you create the geography? How do it make sense? And I think they keep it fresh. They managed to kind of keep it interesting with them like climbing on top of it, them trying to jump off the train, them having points where they're kind of stopping and then restarting again. Each cart feels like a level, like maybe in a
completely
to a lesser extent a video game. Like it feels like there is so much happening, and it's building up to the end of this cart, which I think is quite cool. Definitely.
Completely. And I think what you hit the nail on the head as well, saying that so much of it's emotional driven, because sometimes in these things you'll maybe have one kind of lead bad dude who you get to spend a little bit of time with, and you maybe understand their motivation. But here you really we jump back and forth quite a lot, so we spend a lot of time with the villains of the piece, right? But really not just seeing them doing heinous villainous shit, but you getting a chance to kind of empathize with them to a degree of understanding that they're, from a point, they kind of are now stuck in this situation, and some of them want to get out of it. But you mentioned that they're all kind of connected as a family.
Yeah, most of them are from. I mean, I don't know much about the culture there, because it's very new to me. But from my understanding of it, there's if you get into a kind of this kind of crime family, a lot of them is like cousins and like family members. They're all connected. They all like they all say in the film, like we do this for our families, that they're robbing these trains, they're stealing all the phones and all the wealth and all the money and everything else, which is why our main villain character takes the opportunity, goes, we can do a kidnapping here, and it's like his dad's like, no, they stick to the plan. You got a certain amount of time, it's planned, get out, get in, get out, and they got more than they bargained for. And that's the thing, even the commando character is not much of a threat at the start really anyway. He's taken out a few of them here and there, but they easily do outpower him at times. They do take him out a few times in the film. It's not until it gets really personal and then start doing really stupid decisions, that's when it starts to alter and starts to get scary, because even the characters are like getting really terrified and like just they want off this is not worth it, which is, it's great to see the reactions, and the facial reactions for everyone in the film is so fun. It's like you can see the fear in their eyes, it makes for an entertaining film. Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think they did a really, really good job of rounding out both sides. So you kind of got a sense of the characterization. It never just descended into kind of like mindless action for the sake of action. I think it's always got to be story and character driven. And I did a really good job of striking that balance here. And I found it never stepped into a lot of the tropes that I kind of associate with Bollywood movies. And I think you said this a bit earlier, because it would have been so weird if halfway through the movie it just stopped for like a big dance sequence.
I think the most I had is during the start. Yeah, I mean, when he goes for the more kind of dreamish kind of sequence, when he's at the wedding, and there's a few flashback moments as well when they're talking about showing the lifeline on the palms, which I think is really nice.
Yeah.
So you really do buy they are in love, and they have great chemistry, and you want to see him succeed. It's a character that's not an invincible soldier. He's just there for love, and that's all been taken away from him now. And his kind of motivation towards the last hour of the film is obviously one, to get revenge, but also two is to, save his sister, save the his wife's sister, because that's the last promise he made, kind of thing. And he's going to go through all of it. And there's a line that I kind of kept, which I think is quite good. He says, this is from the main bad guy of the film. It's like, who kills like this? I killed 4 of your people. You finished off 40 of my family. You're not a protector. You're a fucking monster. And that's towards the end of the film, and it's accurate because he's killed off most of that entire crew.
Totally.
Much, right?
Yeah, but even the fact that we're kind of getting a chance for the kind of the so-called villains in the piece to kind of get that sort of range where it's not, they don't make it so clear cut of being, okay, this is good versus evil. I mean, the situations gets ever more fucked up, and everyone's kind of
even the civilian characters step in, don't they? That they kind of like, there's a few that are like, oh, we're standing by too much on this. You're helping us so much. We have a few side characters that you wouldn't suspect just having little shovels or kind of like,
the ladies, right? There's kind of like a group of sort of 3 older ladies who end up finishing off a couple of people, but one really pretty graphically.
One brute guy they kind of finish off, which is like very rewarding, is considering how many people they've killed and collateral damage along the way, kind of thing. Which I think is quite good. And so again, it has a bit of human element to the film as well. And there's moments where you just take breaks and pauses, and it's he is a killing machine towards that last hour, but he's also trying to do as best he can as well, the situation. But it's quite interesting. There's a few facts about the film itself. So in terms of kill, one thing I kind of know before I got the Steelbook edition, which you might have known, is that Amazon have exclusive rights. They have streaming deals, which is interesting because this kill, the one we both got, it's only available in the US only, Steelbook and 4K, but it's not available anywhere else, not in UK, not in Germany, which Germany always have these films before anyone else because it's their
particularly with Korean ones.
It's weird. There's been a weird thing going on with these kind of like streaming rights. So basically, Amazon have, I think if I remember correctly, about 8 months worth of streaming rights exclusive for Amazon UK, and that's why there's no UK release. That's why there's no release anywhere else. There's only a Lionsgate in the US. Very similar. One deliberately pointed out Everything and Everywhere All at Once, which still has not got a UK release. Oscar-winning film. How many Oscars? Like 5? God knows how many.
Yeah.
Still has not got a UK release, and it's kind of it's really weird how some of these films can be quite restricted. Like Blink and You Miss a Cinema release, and I'm very happy that Twilight of the Warriors is at least getting a UK release for Zavi 4K, which is great for Cine Asia, which is great. But it's weird how some of these films, genre films, that we're loving, enjoying, are not getting like a bit more of a worldwide physical release, which is a bit concerning a bit. So I'm very glad we've at least got something on here. At least it's region free as well for people. But.
And we're lucky in a way that at least we kind of got an English friendly release out of the States. Because I'm a huge fan of the Rurouni Kenshin series, and after the first 3, there was a little bit of a time gap before they came back and made part 4, and they made the prequel. And Netflix stepped in before they kind of finished production. So Netflix has kind of pre-bought the international rights outside of Japan. So impossible to get parts 4 and 5 on physical media unless you kind of get them from Japan, which don't have English subs on them. And I think, but we mentioned The Night Comes for Us, and that's one that really hurts me a lot because Netflix are keeping that close to their chest. I suspect the same thing will happen with The Shadow Strays. And I wish that, I think that I know a few people have already started lobbying Criterion, because Criterion are the only label that Netflix will even contemplate the idea of being a physical media release. So they did The Irishman.
Yes,
I think they did something else as well that was a Netflix exclusive, which ended up getting a release through Criterion. Can't remember what the other one is, but so there is kind of a precedent for the streamers relinquishing and allowing somebody to kind of do a boutique label release, even if it's just for a limited period. I'm less confident that that'll happen with the sort of movies that we're talking about here, because action cinema is always a bit more niche, but it's very frustrating because I think I do find it's a less. I like to have the physical media release because it's just nice knowing that if your internet goes down, you can still watch what you want.
It's deleted off the streaming. That's the thing. If it goes off Amazon in the UK, that's it. You can't watch it. And it's a really strange how like these films can be so hyped and can be well received, win awards, can win Oscars in some cases, and still it's kind of struggling to find. Well, not struggling to find a distributor, but it's weird how it can be locked on a one platform. You got to watch it there. You cannot watch it if you don't see it there. And it's not always broadcasted that way as well. Because similar to Kill, like Kill was only available in cinemas for a few weeks, if that, and it's now locked on Amazon, which is how you watched it. But if you didn't know that, or if you didn't come across it, that's it. It's one of those films that can be kind of lost until it gets randomly found again, until they announce a sequel or a remake or something. Which
you mentioned remake. I'm a bit like Lionsgate said. I think before it even came out in the cinemas, they were going to do a US remake, which I think is a horrible idea.
Horrible, hate it. How? I just see how can someone top this? That idea of a train, as you said, there's a synopsis in the train car. How can you possibly top it? I mean, there's no way that I don't think. Well, Lionsgate can definitely do the horror, do the violent aspect. They can go full 18 if they wanted to. I don't think they would. And I don't know how you would translate it, unless you do the exact same story.
That's my big. Unless you said it still said it in India, but just literally just make it an almost shot-for-shot remake of just making English dialogue. But then I'm sure you could just do an English dub and have the same sort of effect. Not that I think the English dub would.
It's the same thing with Train to Busan and Raid. They've been trying to do remakes for those films for how many years? And it's every time I keep hearing about it, we'll see a director attached or a star attached, and they keep dropping out because they can't seem to crack that formula. Is when you've got something perfect, it's already there. There's no reason. If anything, they should help them make the sequel, which or do something with that director. Maybe help him get an American movie fueled by him, which seems to be happening. She mentioned the Shadow Strays director. He's doing Nobody too.
And supposedly also Train to New York, which is kind of the Train to Busan.
Which is whoa! It's that's I'm excited because I'll just see what he does with an American budget and a bit more Lionsgate again. I think being a bit more okay, go ahead and do what you want, kind of thing. A bit more freedom compared to most studios. So
yeah, completely. I think they're almost the A24 of action, Lionsgate, in a way, where they are kind of supporting creators. But I think it's one of these things where I just wish they would just go back and give us another chance to. Before we started recording, we mentioned kind of Godzilla -1, and that's still showing in cinemas. It's just kind of come back again to UK cinemas for the 70th anniversary. But I would much rather they just bring back the film rather than remake it. Just give us another chance to see it at the cinema, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did the same thing with Everywhere and All at Once. I mean, I remember seeing that. He's out in the US first, and then he got an IMAX release the day before Doctor Strange, the second one. And I thought that was it. I was lucky enough to see that at least a one-off showing in IMAX. And then obviously when it got big and word of mouth, it kind of generated more cinema showings and with the Oscar buzz as well. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get that kind of level of attention compared to that film. But it's a shame that, because they do tend to replay a lot of older movies. So it would be a good chance to show, hey, look, a chance to see Kill in cinemas again, or maybe even something like Shadow Strays, because Netflix can put their films in cinemas. They did do a Knives Out 2. They had a 2 weeks exclusive deal. They had cinemas before the official premiere one on Netflix. So there's opportunities here to kind of get it out there more and get the book, a second chance, as you mentioned, to kind of get people to see it again, not just on a casual streaming version of it. Definitely.
Completely, and particularly with Kill, and imagine that the group experience. I mean, you can speak to this because you've got a chance to see it on the big screen, but the group sort of experience of watching it in a kind of hopefully quite busy screening room, very different to kind of watching it at home. Where I think, particularly if it's something that kind of has so many opportunities for audiences to collectively gasp and wince and ooh through it, then I think it kind of makes those type of screenings a lot more fun. Like we just saw, we're right in the middle of the BFI Art of Action Festival at the moment, which is if you're in the UK, check your local cinema because there's a good chance that they might be getting involved, because most of the UK cinemas, particularly the independent ones, have been screening at least one or two things. So we saw Police Story a week and a half ago, which is my first time ever seeing it on the big screen. It's a movie I've seen so many times, and it was really interesting hearing the audience reaction to it, because initially, for maybe about the first 5 minutes of that first shanty sequence, people were very unsure of how to react. Like you could tell the people who'd seen it before, but there was a lot of nervous laughter through quite inappropriate moments of, but I would describe not being appropriate to that. Like there's a bit when one of the guys pisses himself in the beginning, right, in the raid, right, he just gets too freaked out. His guys, his emotions are starting to go, and Jackie has to kind of calm him down and sort of stop him from kind of losing the plot. And that's not really a beat that's played for laughs. Though there are a lot of beats in Police Story that are played for laughs. That's not one of them. But that kind of got a sort of a smattering of sort of nervous applause from people. Nervous laughter from people. But as the film went on, I think by the time that we got to the bus, people were like, all right, okay, shit, okay, now this is, there was no more laughter. People were kind of much more dialed in, unless it was an intentional joke in the film, and then when people were following it. But the response to kind of that, particularly to some of the kind of the more sort of famous action sequences, a crowd response was quite a different vibe than I'd ever experienced before, which is always just watching it either myself or just with a small group of mates at home. And I think Kill was one that I imagine would have been pretty cool to see in a packed room. If it was it quite a packed room?
Yeah, it was quite reasonably sized, definitely. Yeah, it was. You can tell that people who are aware of the film were there to see it on the opening day. Similar to myself, this and Twilight of the Warriors, two of the really good experiences in the cinemas this year for sure. In terms of just everyone tuned in, the way to watch the same type of film and reacting kind of very similar as you mentioned, and some of those kind of more intense moments, kind of unintentional comedies, dark facial reactions. I mentioned about the scene about Michael Myers inside with the silhouette. That made me laugh. Made a lot of other people laugh. It's just because of how mad this film is, just railing up kind of thing. It's a good experience having that, especially with action films or films like this. It's you kind of feel a buzz, and you can have conversations with people in the same room after and see what the vibe is. And I think it can influence a film. What your opinion of the film anyway. I think definitely you can come out of it really positive, really hyped, and really kind of happy that you've seen it. But like as you mentioned, if you're on streaming, you could pause it, you could lose that momentum, you can go to the other room, or whether you're distracted, might be on your phone or something.
Distraction's a big one. Okay, because for myself as well, I'm just as guilty of it. It's really hard to sit and watch something at home and not have the phone nearby, and so you kind of find that you're there's more things fighting for your attention when you're kind of at home rather than just being able to.
Luckily, on the second viewing for it, when I did watch it on the 4K, I did have some friends over. Partner watched it for the first time as well, and that was a good reaction as well because that was quite quiet. He was focusing on it, kind of thing, not getting up or anything, and we had just as much positive reaction there than it was in the cinema. So it was good. Yes, this was definitely a winner for sure. This is not like kind of a fluke. It's like it's a bunch of people still haven't seen it, know nothing about it, just putting the film on, saying you're gonna love this, and again the similar kind of reactions, which is it's always a good sign. When you're watching something like this. But just a beast of a film, which
it really is, and hopefully, and I think you said this before we, just when we were going back and forth in text and like talking about sitting down today, and that we're hoping that it might maybe be a little bit of a turning point for Indian cinema to kind of step off more into this sort of area of building on the success of this, and hopefully have a little wee action renaissance in Indian movies, which we have sort of seen in Indonesian cinemas. Definitely,
Indonesia, Hong Kong's coming back massive in a big way from the film. So I think this year's been the most interesting in terms of action films and some of these niche ones. It's a film that I watched, Boy Kills World, I think it's correctly, which again very surprising. Again, very limited marketing. I think it's Lionsgate as well, if I remember correctly.
I think it is, but I'm sure that's South African. I think South African or South American. I think
it's made these little pockets of movies. Like, what this is really like. We're getting a bit of a buzz here going on. There's a bit more creative freedom being happening with some of these directors, and whether it's based in America or anywhere around the world, and it's good to see a celebration of that. So I definitely think there's a bit of this year seems to be a turning point for action movies, and obviously you mentioned Shadow Stray, which Netflix, unfortunately, only available on Netflix. Could have been a cinema film. I think that would have been quite interesting to see.
I think his last couple have sadly just been straight to Netflix. I mean, everything since the Night Comes for Us. And did you see The Big Four? Just while we're on the subject.
No, it's on my list. It's on my list. It's one I need to check out. I think it's on Netflix as well.
Yeah, but surprisingly, like very different to the Shadow Strays, but a lot of fun. That kind of felt almost like a throwback to. I mean, he said he was really inspired by Stephen Chow, but I actually got more of a vibe of like Wheels on Meals or.
Okay.
The kind of like the better elements of the Lucky Stars movies.
Well, that's good. That's good too.
Where it kind of had that kind of like it's as much a toe rooted in comedy as it is in rooted in action, but the action still hits really hard and is really kind of well staged and well orchestrated. I'm really pleasantly surprised by the Big Four. Once you watch it, hit me up and we can do a Big Four stream. Even though I think that's been out for quite a long time, because that was kind of a really good fun movie. But I think we are in this kind of good time for new movies coming out. Hot off the heels of Johnny Toe making a few statements that I think some people have maybe slightly taken out of context, because he mentioned Twilight of the Warriors in amongst being quite vocal and quite critical of the current state of play in Hong Kong cinema. Because I think to us as outsiders, it feels like it's a really special, wonderful time. But from his point of view, kind of coming from a producer and a director, Twilight of the Warriors kind of struggled to make its money back.
Oh,
it's
really?
not managed, because it cost so much, right? It was over.
Yeah. Oh, the
200 million.
productions. I would have thought, being so well internationally kind of recognized now, and obviously getting such a massive release, and obviously greenlit and like a prequel and a sequel off the bat, it's surely that this is, you know, going for it kind of thing, you know, go big or go home kind of thing. So I'm surprised.
I thought so too, but no, it financially didn't do that well, and I think there's still lots of issues with obviously the things that we know about with censorship and with kind of people having to run scripts by the kind of the state before they're allowed to make stuff. A lot of that circumnavigated on streaming, so there's been some kind of really interesting stuff coming out of mainland China. Netflix equivalent, kind of IQE is probably the most popular one, and so a lot of these movies are now getting picked up in the States for physical media distribution. So like the 2 Eye for an Eye movies and Blind War and these sort of things. So it's I feel a lot more positive about mainland China and Hong Kong, particularly than Johnny To seems to. I kind of get his comments, and I think it's not been latched on in the same way as like Scorsese having a dig at movies, or recently Tarantino having a dig at Villeneuve. And I don't know if you saw that one. Like Tarantino was kind of going off and saying he refuses to watch the modern Dune movies or something else. He said he just basically was done with remakes and didn't like reimaginings, which was everybody has had a go at Tarantino for, because I think so much of his stuff is kind of pretty reactionary. But I digress. I do think we are in a really good, really positive time as fans of action cinema, where there's a lot of interesting stuff happening from different parts of the world that is a lot easier for us to consume now than it kind of ever was before. But for anybody on the fence about if they should pick up Kill, absolutely do pick up Kill on physical media. I think that steelbook's great, and I think it's I don't know how many more Bollywood action movies I'll get a chance to pick up, but I think even just looking at the filmographies of the people involved, our South Korean cinematographers are going on to work on a few other Indian movies too. I think they're doing one called Fighter, and they did one called Tiger 3, which I think both have come out of India as well. That I know nothing about. I think I couldn't even find a trailer for Fighter, but looks like hopefully they're getting more work off the back of.
Yeah, absolutely. It seemed like a jumping point, just from the impression I got with all the interviews and the making of, and them just talking about it, saying like doing something out of the box for them in terms of the way they're going to make films. So I think we're going to start seeing maybe a trend of these types of movies coming out, and obviously with Lionsgate backing on this one, I think they definitely could get involved and help distribute those films. There's one, that could work well with US and the UK market. Absolutely. So I think we're in a real special place now with this, and I'm hoping this will get more attention and will generate more buzz as it goes along. So I think there would be like a lot of people will stumble upon it for sure. I'm hoping that it will get a bigger release internationally, physical media release anyway, because these locking things on streaming, it definitely doesn't help these films for sure.
And I don't even really know how much it helps the streamer, really, because I know that having a cluster of titles that you can only watch on that one specific place, but it's not like they're making extra revenue the more people watch that particular one single title, right? I think their model works around wanting to keep you subscribed for as long as possible. They can get that money from every month, right?
Levels, yeah, you can only watch that film if you subscribe only, if you do that, which putting some films or TV shows a hostage essentially. If you don't subscribe, you don't get to see them again, kind of thing, which is a bit of a shame. But definitely
mentioned Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's years ago now. That's probably 2 years since that came.
I think so. Yeah. Most places now, but again, it's the UK still. It's not got a physical release, just down to exclusive rights from Amazon, and it's really, really bizarre. So I'm hoping this film will get a bit more recognition as it goes along. Hopefully this video will help convince a few people to go and check it out, whether pick up the edition or go and at least rent it potentially. I think with that partnership with Lionsgate now, I think there could be some more interesting projects on the way, hopefully, for sure.
I hope so too, dude. And I think certainly for our respective crowds, I think kind of most of the people that kind of come to our channels and watch our stuff are much more familiar with us talking about kind of Hong Kong and Chinese movies, and in my case, a little bit dabbling more and more with Japanese and with South Korean stuff when I can kind of get a chance to make a video about that sort of stuff too. But I think yeah, I would encourage everyone to actually go and track it down. I think leave links underneath here to the physical media release and to the streaming link as well for Amazon, because I think I don't know if the deal that I got offered is still available elsewhere, but certainly it was $1.99 to stream, and you can watch it as many times you wanted, which is a pretty good deal to sort of see if it's going to be for you. But I think if you're a fan of, certainly if you're kind of a fan of any action cinema, but specifically I'd say probably, like you mentioned, a fan of the Indonesian action cinema. That's the most appropriate comparison, because it's got the gore factor that we don't always see in Hong Kong cinema.
Very bloody, very brutal. A lot of knife play, which can make it very squeamish. It's every part, I think, of the body has been stabbed at one point. Environmental kills. Obviously, the one very appropriately on the fire extinguisher. Which was quite nasty.
There was a couple of ones I've never seen anything before. So I think him setting fire to somebody's head.
I was going to say, with the lights
pretty well. And also somebody kind of getting almost their head frozen with a fire extinguisher and then smashed in, which was also pretty unique too. And I think you could tell that he was kind of having a lot of fun with kind of coming up with different sort of
the music's great as well. The music, the energy of the film is very high. Like, you never feel like you're getting like the film's jogging along or anything, getting sluggish. It's just constantly moving, constantly like knowing it's going to each kind of cart. There's always an escalation that keeps happening, whether from the bandits' point of view or from our hero character's point of view. And I even like some of the jokes in it, like in some of the commentaries, like with the two specifically in mind is the use of guns, because you could say like, oh, why is there not being much guns used in the film? There is a commentary on that in the film, and I think it's a commentary on Indian-based kind of how they can retain weapons, because one of the bandits has a weapon. It's a knockoff weapon, and it doesn't work. It jams. He uses it for like 2 seconds, I think, and he just throw it away. And it's like, because the guns are so expensive and they're such poorly made, so knives is just the equivalent of that. So I think that's quite an interesting little commentary, but also works for the film as well, because you can easily say, well, why isn't there loads of guns in the film? And then when you do get guns, it's from the security guards, which don't appear until almost the end of the film, which just happened to be at the very end of the cart. They just happened to stumble across this situation, which I think is quite funny and quite humorous. We have a commentary on that, which I think is quite funny.
A couple of things that, again, I don't know how it's going to translate. A couple of things that I think are curiously unique to trains in India specifically, where they've got these massive metal shutters between the carriages, which we don't really have, certainly don't have in the UK. And I've never seen that on trains when I've been on kind of like trains in Asia. It's not really something that I've been aware of or seen there. But the kind of the train infrastructure in India are an awful lot older, and the kind of carriages are kind of quite almost like a mix of like sleeper carriage and regular carriage, where you have sort of double tiers, where there's kind of like a space for someone to sit up high. So I kind of think just created this environment that allowed them to do so much more in like a confined space in really interesting ways, but was so completely grounded in that culture that's why I'm so skeptical of any idea to try and take it and do it somewhere else.
Absolutely not. A remake would not benefit. There'd be nothing to do. You would know he is violent. You would know he is investable, I'd say, in terms of a character. And I think it'd be a terrible idea. But they say they do a remake, but we'll see when they do it and who they get potentially. I think I had a discussion with my friend about this when we were. If they were going to do one, could I have Scott Adkins potentially? If I'm saying this incorrectly. I think that's the only person I would see you could do a film. It makes sense for his wheelhouse of movies, what he does, and with his partnership with Lionsgate for John Wick 4, that's the only one I could see believable, because you need someone who's going to be believable in that kind of role, and someone who can be a bit more. You can't get like another Keanu Reeves again. You have to get someone a bit smaller, actor-wise, and kind of. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Scotland's a good call, and I think in some ways, if they are going to go down that road, then and if Lionsgate is somehow listening to this, which you never know, I would say just do it in India again. Like,
why not?
If you want to make it for a Western audience, then Scott Adkins is a great idea. Just put Scott Adkins as your
American tourist goes to I can see that.
And kind of play it out that way. But I think kind of allow the people who've worked on this one a second bite of of the pie to kind of give your people behind the camera another chance to kind of basically do the same sort of thing again if they want to kind of anglify or want to, is that the right word? If they want to,
yeah, or maybe an opportunity to do things maybe they couldn't do initially first time around, or if you've got more to play with, maybe a bit more of a budget. It depends on what the intention is, really, I suppose. But just from my understanding of it, like he definitely wants to do. I don't know if it'd be a sequel to this or maybe like something that's inspired from this, but I think we think that with more of these types of films, at least from that director and hopefully from those stars, because they seem to be just getting into it now and they've experienced things which that we really love to see, this kind of genre kind of cinema. So hopefully this is the start of the beginning of it, hopefully.
I completely agree, dude. And what a perfect way to bring us to a close. Unless is there anything else that you can think of that we didn't get a chance to say?
No, I think that covers everything. Yeah, I'd definitely say it's an excellent film from start to finish. If you like action movies, if you like this kind of wave of genre movies we've been seeing, like Twilight the Warriors, and especially with like Shadow Stray, you're definitely going to enjoy this for sure. It's very emotional filled from our main character. It's kind of from his journey from start to finish. Great side characters, great villains, very creative from start to finish. Good use in terms of his technical level, how it's played in terms of the camera work, the editing. The film is very bright and lit. It gets grimmer and darker as the film goes along. Just down to as you mentioned, the psychological effect, a state of point of view, which is just a killing machine, but it's also doesn't get stale, doesn't get boring. It just gets more creative, it gets more fun, and you just want to see how this film comes to conclusion, which does. It comes through a really big head by the end, and it's very satisfying. And the main thing for me is I always say on my channel is like, if you can get your story right, you can get your characters right, everything else is going to flow through naturally, and it achieves that really well. So I think absolutely worth picking up or renting, absolutely for sure.
I would agree, and I'd also say if you're a fan, it's unlikely you're going to be watching the two of us speak if you're not. But if you're a fan more of horror than you are action, also give this a look.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does have it in a way. It's one really long, crazy slasher movie in a way too.
In places, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so I think it probably scratches that itch for a lot of people, particularly if you kind of like horror movies that are not reliant on jump scares.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I think it definitely will kind of be worth sort of checking out from that point of view as well. But yeah, I absolutely adored it, and I think I was surprised at how much I adored it. It's kind of why I wanted us to sit down together and do this, because I had to basically put a lot of my own, I guess in a way, prejudices and my expectations of Bollywood cinema in general completely to rest based on some of the ones that I'd seen previously, because this was just so unashamedly unlike that. And I think it has been, as we said at the beginning, much more crafted with a sort of more of a Western sensibility in a way, or maybe kind of more of just an action genre sensibility than a Western sensibility is better to say, because it's I still think the Indonesian action is probably the closest comparison, and that's not really Western. So yeah, let's just say again, much more crafted with a genre kind of mindset in place, rather than it kind of coming to it as being a sort of traditional Indian or traditional Bollywood movie. So don't let that put you off if you've had bad or less than enjoyable experiences with things like RRR or any of the other kind of big high concept kind of Indian action movies. I tried their remake of Born to Fly, the Chinese response to Top Gun Maverick. And I thought that I did quite enjoy the Chinese version, Born to Fly, but I sort of struggled with the Indian version. It was a bit too patriotic in a way that it was hard for me to get invested in. But yeah, all of that doesn't come into play here. I think you can kind of go into this just purely if you're a fan of kind of action or horror movies, and you'll find so much to love. Cool, man. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, and to all of you for making it to the end of this and kind of listening to us enthuse about the joy that is Kill. Both of us, I think, 2 thumbs way up.
Absolutely.
You did a specific review video on your channel as well.
Yeah, I did a review when I first watched it. So definitely check that out for sure.
I'll link that down underneath as well. And I've just posted my unboxing of the 4K, so you can kind of get a closer look at what's inside that. And links for all the other stuff are down below. Tell us, I think, because we've both been very open about the fact that we're not super familiar with this country's cinema. So are we missing a whole bunch of titles?
Hidden one there that I've not known about. Absolutely.
please jump into the comments and tell us what we should be tracking down next, or if there's something that we've kind of missed from a few years ago, and we will endeavor to do that as well. But from me, thank you so much, all of you, for watching, and I will say goodbye. And Andrew,
very much. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it, and check out Kill when you can, and check out Johnny's videos on the unboxing definitely as well. And it's great content, amazing content.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. We'll see you all in the next one.